What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this NBA 13 game slate on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. Yesterday was disappointing. If you guys played Killian Hayes with me, you know how we did. 37% owned Killian Hayes, and he was projected at 18%. So I was looking to gain leverage, but it was the opposite direction for me. Yeah, so bad call on my part, but you can't predict injuries. You can't predict the 0 for 3 shooting, and apparently he tightened up, so he is questionable going in tonight's slate. But we have a 13-game NBA slate, and there are 2 teams that are going to be standout for us. Let's go ahead and talk about this NBA slate. 13-game slate, so there's a ton of GPP options usually with these size slates. But we're going to be going game by game and identifying some of those under-the-radar plays, some chalk plays. Right now, I'm recording this at 5:30 a.m., so we don't have ownership projections, but that's good because it gives you the raw, unedited side of the slate. I'm just punching in numbers, and I've crunched all my projections here for the past couple hours. Woke up at 3, just couldn't go back to bed, so I thought I'd get started early here. So let's go ahead and dive right into this NBA slate here, starting with the Orlando Magic and the 76ers. There's really nothing too much going on here with the Orlando Magic, and they're starting to become more healthy as the season progresses here. So now we have Wendell Carter Jr. He is questionable here for this game. We still have Michael Carter-Williams, Fultz, Isaac, Moore still out for these guys, so they've been out for a little bit. So again, doesn't really impact them. But the one thing to note with these Orlando Magic is that the price tags have all come down. I did say lastly that Cole Anthony's minutes were taking a back seat to Jalen Suggs, and again, he only played 28 minutes. So another thing to keep in mind here and monitor here. As we see more games here for the Orlando Magic, they're going deeper into the rotations. The price tags are peeling back. Really no interest. Mo Bamba's back here, and he's only projected 25 minutes. So the minute upside is just not going to be here. The only guy I have somewhat interest here in is Franz Wagner. Projected 32 minutes. I liked it a lot more when we were seeing 35 plus minutes from him. But we just aren't seeing that from any one of these players. So just GPP options are only projected to score 100 points. Don't like the matchup anyway. An 11-point spread. So there is some blowout potential here for the Orlando Magic. Switching over to the 76ers, a little bit more interest in these guys. Tyrese Maxey has been playing extreme minutes. Even when he does play extreme minutes, as you can see, he's not performing the best. But the price tags have come back for a majority of these players, with the exception of Maxey. So I do have some GPP interest in Tyrese Maxey and the rest of these guys. Seth Curry came back down to 6K. Tobias Harris all the way down to 6.7K. And keep in mind, Joel Embiid is still in the lineup, so it does make sense that these price tags are coming back down. But regardless, there is some blowout potential, so just some GPP interest in these guys. Tyrese Maxey has a minute upside. Same thing with Seth Curry and Tobias Harris. Pick one of those 3, and if you pick the right one of them could get hot pretty early. Joel Embiid's price tag is not that intriguing to me here at 11K. I think that's pretty priced accordingly. And a very bad pace down spot here. A very bad matchup just in general to be targeting. Right now, the over-under is a 211.5, which is one of the lower ones here on the entire slate. Switching over to the Brooklyn Nets, not too much interest in these guys as well. Patty Mills, though, does draw some GPP interest here, 4.9K. He is playing consistent minutes here in the starting rotation, but we just know Patty Mills is good for his shooting ability. Fantasy point per minute wise, he's sitting at about a 0.79 fantasy point per minute, which is pretty respectable. But right now he's projected 30 minutes and a 28.5 projection. Definitely don't mind him here, a 5.8 point per dollar value. But all these other price tags are not so appealing here. Kyrie Irving back in the lineup here playing alongside James Harden. They just don't mesh well. Their fantasy points per minute do get a drop here when they both play together in the lineup. We do know that Kevin Durant is out for these guys, but Kevin Durant being out and then Kyrie Irving and James Harden back into the lineup really does put a wrench in things. So really the only guy I have true interest in terms of the price tag here is going to be Patty Mills here at $4,900, a 5.8 point per dollar value, and maybe some outside interest here in bigger GPPs with Kyrie Irving and James Harden. Switching over to the Washington Wizards, also, this is one of the higher over-unders here on the slate. So another thing to consider when taking a look at all these players. All the guys are back here for the Washington Wizards. They have nobody on their injury report. Caldwell Pope is probably my favorite option. Like taking shooters and pace up spots. He's a 4.3K price tag, projected 30 minutes. Could fly under the radar. I can expect him to have lower ownership. But the rest of these guys, really no interest whatsoever. We're looking across the board here with Bradley Beal, 8.9K. That's a little bit too priced up. I want to see him closer to 8K because right now we have him projected at 38 points. And really to cover that price tag to hit 5 times value, you have to get to 40 points. Other than that, Spencer Dinwiddie still coming back down with the price increase with Bradley Beal being out, and then also Kyle Kuzma got a price increase with Bradley Beal being out, so that doesn't make much sense. Really no interest outside of Caldwell Pope for bigger GPPs. Switching over to one of the more intriguing matchups here on the slate. Keep in mind, The Minnesota Timberwolves are playing on a back-to-back. It's a 2-point spread here for the Atlanta Hawks. Two not-so-great teams going at it. So I expect all the minutes to be pulled back here for the Minnesota Timberwolves, at least to be limited. So Patrick Beverley here is projected 28 minutes when he just played 30 minutes last game. For a veteran, I can expect about 29-ish minutes here for Pat Bev as a ceiling. He comes out to a 5.4 point per dollar value. I definitely don't mind him in GBPs, but other than that, really no interest outside of some of these superstars here for this roster. Karl Anthony Towns did get a price decrease here down to 9.5K. Does draw a very good matchup versus Okongwu, so I do have a little bit of interest in him and bigger GBPs, and I do think there's some leverage here with all the center options on the slate. But Pat Bev, Karl Anthony Towns really are the only guys I have true interest in. And then we always talk about Anthony Edwards and D'Lo. One of the two does have a ceiling game normally when they play starter minutes. Keep in mind, they both didn't play into the fourth quarter that much last game. D'Lo did get into early foul trouble, so it limited his upside. So it was Anthony Edwards getting the higher point total of the two, but did play 39 minutes and had a very bad contest. So if you're looking for high scoring potential between those two, it's always one or the other having a ceiling game. But that being said, Karl Anthony Towns and Pat Bev are probably my two favorite options here from this roster. Switching over to the Atlanta Hawks have a ton of interest from me. Okongwu is priced at $4,600 and he's projected to play 33 minutes, which makes him one of the better value plays on the entire slate. We know that Clint Capella is still out for him, so he's going to be starting and playing the starter center minutes. Also, Bogdanovic is out, so that does impact the rotations from the shooting guard and small forwards as well. So Okongwu, my favorite option here from this roster, great value play. Same thing with DeAndre Hunter. As long as he's seeing consistent starter minutes, which we have seen, he's played 30 and 35 the past two games, and he's also started. So he shot the ball 17 times last game, which is very, very good for him. Love the upside from him at 4.2K. He's also a fantastic value play from this roster, and I consider him cash viable. Gallinari, 4.2K, also not that bad of a value play. However, he's probably not going to start here in the starting rotation, but he is projected to play a decent amount of minutes here off the bench, 29 minutes. I consider him more of a GPP option, but I definitely don't hate him. In terms of fantasy points per minute, he is averaging 0.85 fantasy points per minute here on the season, which is below his career average, but nonetheless, he is projected to play 29 minutes off the bench, which is pretty good for a 4.2K price tag. Kevin Huerter, a fantastic option because he's always in the rotation, but he's also projected to start and play a crazy amount of minutes here, projected at 35 minutes. We know he's just a shooter, and he's averaging 0.75 fantasy points per minute here on the season, but as long as he gets hot, and he gets hot pretty quick, then he can easily pay off that price tag and can easily crush the slate wide open. Last but not least, we have to talk about Trae Young here, 9.8K. They get a price reduction, so it is pretty noteworthy there. He's also projected to play 37 minutes the entire game, and that will bring me into my favorite prize pick here on the slate. If you guys haven't signed up for prize picks, go ahead and enter code using DGF. Just stop what you're doing, and you get 100% match up to $100, and I cover prize picks entries every single slate. I'll also be doing another video sometime during the day where I'll be just covering just prize picks entries. So if you guys are interested in seeing that content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so that you are notified by email when that video does come out. But let's go ahead and cover my two favorite entries here. DeAndre Hunter over 13.5 points. He's hit that the past 2 out of 3 games. And then also Trae Young, with this being a pace-up spot, with the bulk of the offense going to be on his shoulders here, especially without Clint Capella on the floor. He does get a boost in usage, a boost in fantasy points per minute, and I do like him to hit the over here of 27.5. These are both raw points. Those are my two favorite entries here on Prize Picks. Be sure to enter code using DGF. Helps us out, helps you guys out. You get a free $100 deposit into your account as long as you deposit that $100. But those are my favorite options here from this slate, or from this team rather. John Collins at 7K is also not that bad of an option, but he's probably my least favorite out of all these guys. But these guys are all fantastic values with the injuries currently off the court here. A lot of minutes to go around, especially in the starting rotation. Switching over to the Charlotte Hornets, not too much interest at all whatsoever. I can pretty much skip over this team. We did get some price reductions on guys like LaMelo Ball, PJ Washington, and Gordon Hayward. So if you want to include them in your player pool, definitely don't mind that. But the minute upside just not going to be there. And also Kelly Oubre is questionable. So if he does play, then that does eat into the minute upside, does eat into the usage here of all these guys across the board. Switching over to the Boston Celtics, these guys are also pretty healthy. Really no interest in these guys whatsoever. Smart is questionable as of right now, so if he is ruled out, then I do have interest in guys like Dennis Schroeder, who does have the minute upside of about 30 to 35 minutes. He kills it whenever Marcus Smart is out. But outside of Dennis Schroeder, I probably won't have any of these guys in my player pool. I'm going to be limiting to the guys who I know have a lot better chance of hitting value. Jason Tatum and obviously Jaylen Brown, they're always GPP viable, but their price tags are a little bit too high for me, especially in this matchup here versus the Charlotte Hornets. But outside of those guys, I really don't have too much interest in the Boston Celtics. Switching over to the Portland Trailblazers, we know that CJ McCollum is back for these guys. They are still without Norman Powell, Damian Lillard, Larry Nance, and also Cody Zeller. So, there is some interest, some minute upside with these guys like Robert Covington here at 6.1K, 35 projected minutes. Definitely don't mind him for GPPs. He's probably my favorite option here, the target on this roster, because his minutes aren't really impacted regardless of the rotations because Norman Powell is still out. Anthony Simons did take a huge hit with CJ McCollum back, only shot the ball 11 times, did play 35 minutes. I do like the minute upside from him, and technically he's actually not that bad of a fantasy point per minute player here. 39.2 is what we have him pinned at, and he averages 1.13 fantasy points per minute here without Damian Lillard on the court. So that is something to consider. I would consider him for GPPs, but definitely not my favorite option given the matchup here versus Miami as well. Also, Nurkic averaging 1.33 fantasy points per minute here at an 8.7K price tag. Definitely getting out of that range. And CJ McCollum, we can expect to play about 31 minutes, so he did play 28 last game. That's about what we expected. Since he's coming back from that injury, we aren't necessarily going to see him go out and play 35 plus minutes. So there still is some minute upside here to go around some of these other players like Covington, like Simons, like Nasir Little. But these guys are just going to be outside GBP options. And like I said, I don't love the matchup here versus the Miami Heat because it is a slight pace down spot. Switching over to the Miami Heat, we actually have Kyle Lowry out. Markieff Morris is still out, unfortunately, and also Oladipo. I actually do have some interest in some of these guys for GBPs. Max Struss was one of my favorite GBP options last slate. He didn't do bad. Played 29 minutes, got 21 points at a 4K price tag. He is a 4.2K price tag on this slate and also projected the exact same amount of points. In terms of a fantasy point per minute player, he's actually flying a little bit under the radar, averaging 0.9 fantasy points per minute, which is pretty respectable. Comes out to a very good value play, and I actually like him for GBPs. Again, expecting him to carry lower ownership, and it's a good matchup here. The projected to score 112 points. This is a pace-up spot here for the Portland Trailblazers, or for the Miami Heat, rather. And then Jimmy Butler at a 9.1K price tag, one of my favorite overall plays for GBPs last slate. Did very well, dropped 51.5 points, and I expect a repeat performance here in a pace-up spot. Definitely don't mind him for GBPs. A great low-owned pivot if you're looking to pay up there in that range. 9.1K is definitely not too much here for Jimmy Butler. We're used to seeing him in that 9 to 10K range. He has hit 10K, and now that he's at a 9.1K price tag, definitely don't mind him as well. The rest of these guys are just going to be GBP options, minute upsides that not there for Bam Adebayo. He is coming back from injury, so at a 7.7K price tag, I'm going to need to see him play 32-ish to 35 minutes. We didn't see that last game, so I don't know what that's going to look like. But right now he's projected 34. Don't know if that's accurate. I definitely have to look out for the injury report and see if that minute upside is going to be for him, going to be there for him. So if he is playing those minutes, then yeah, I do like him. But right now, there's so much uncertainty. Definitely going to be fading him if he's not seeing over 30 minutes. Switching over to the Cleveland Cavs, Darius Garland. Can we talk about him real quick? 9K price tag, has been averaging 1.25 fantasy points per minute without Sexton on the court and has just been balling out. He's probably my favorite option in terms of GPPs here for the Cleveland Cavs. It's also a pace-up spot. 108 points projected right now for the Cleveland Cavs, and we know they usually play at a slower pace. So him with the minute upside, definitely don't mind him, but the rest of these guys, not too much interest in. We have Evan Mobley, the 7.7K price tag. I always like Evan Mobley because he can play power forward and center, which makes it very easy for lineup construction. But outside of those two guys, I really don't have any interest. These guys seem priced accordingly. Markkanen, price at 5.7K, has been coming down in terms of price tag. He's playing about 30 to 32-ish minutes every single game. But the minute upside is really going to be there for Darius Garland, and he has just a tremendous track record as of late, playing 37, 34, 37, 36 minutes and averaging 1.25 fantasy points per minute. So I do like him for GBPs. Switching over to the Chicago Bulls, you have to keep in mind that Zach LaVine is ruled out for these guys. Same thing with Lonzo Ball. So those are two pretty high usage guys to go around in terms of this lineup. DeMar DeRozan, 9.2K. The price tag's a little bit too high for me, but I definitely don't mind him in GPPs. Just hasn't been performing the best without Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine off the court. And this is a pace down spot, so I'm just going to be targeting him for GBPs. Kobe White here, 6.5K. I can say the exact opposite for him. He's been balling out at his price tag with Lonzo Ball off the court, so I don't mind him for GBPs as well. I definitely did tag those two as my favorite two plays. And then Vucevic is always flying under the radar there at 9K. Just don't like the matchup versus Jarrett Allen. We know Jarrett Allen historically is a good defensive player, so I do prefer DeMar DeRozan and also Kobe White in GPPs. Switching over to the Memphis Grizzlies, this is another team that's going to draw a ton of chalk. These guys just all got the price reduction, and they did roll out Kyle Anderson, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, and also Tilly. So a lot of minutes to go around, especially in the starting rotation. Ja Morant right now did get the price reduction down to an 8.9K price tag. Anytime he dips below 9K, I feel like he's always carrying some ownership, a 33-minute projection, and I definitely like what I've been seeing here from Ja Morant. You also take out Dillon Brooks and Desmond Bane. They are two primary ball handlers and scorers there in that lineup. And now you're left with Ja Morant, Melton, Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson, and Steven Adams. Like, who's going to shoot the ball? It's going to be Melton, and it's also going to be Ja Morant. So Melton, to lead on to another point here, if he does start and play, he's going to be mega chalk here at a 3.7K price tag. 27 projected minutes is what they have right now, but I could easily see him playing over 30 minutes, especially if he is starting. He's going to be in a smash spot, going to be very chalk. Jaren Jackson also, I'll be very interested to see where he lies in terms of ownership. 6.6K price tag is very, very cheap, and he actually averages 1.3 fantasy points per minute without Desmond Bane and also Dillon Brooks in the lineup. So right now we have him projected for 42 points. I definitely don't mind him. If he does come down in ownership, then I'm going to be liking him more for GPPs, but I do expect him to be carrying some ownership, and he is going to probably be more on the chalky side at a 6.6K price tag. Zaire Williams is technically in the starting lineup, and he's projected 27 points. He usually doesn't get that much of a run when he does play. He's 3.1K, so I don't mind him as a punt play. I just don't like the minute upside there, and historically, he's not a good fantasy point per minute player. Playing at around a 0.6 fantasy point per minute output. I also have some interest here in Brandon Clark at a 5K price tag. He's projected right now 25 minutes off the bench. Definitely don't mind that, but for cash and GPPs, you want to target those guys with a high minute upside, those guys in the starting rotation. So Brandon Clark at a 5K price tag, don't have as much interest in. But also Contra coming off the bench. The one thing I do like about him is his 3.6K price tag, 28 projected minutes right now. So even if he is coming off the bench, he's playing those starter minutes, and they're good. They're definitely going to need him because they do have missing bigs with Kyle Anderson out of the lineup. So I do also think he's going to carry some ownership for what it's worth. All these guys are going to be relatively chalky, but just to highlight a few of my favorite players here, it's going to be D'Anthony Melton, Jaren Jackson, Ja Morant, and then Contra, probably in that order. I feel like you need a little piece of all these guys, or at least some of these guys here in bigger GPPs, because I do think some of these guys are going to break the slate wide open. The Memphis Grizzlies and Atlanta Hawks are going to be carrying the most ownership by far, in my opinion. And as we get closer to the lock, I do think people are going to see the over-under there for Atlanta. I think they're going to be a little bit more on the chalky side, but Memphis makes for some very good pivot options, especially the starters here in this lineup. Switching over to the Bucks, really no interest in this team whatsoever because all these guys are back fully healthy. Drew Holiday is technically questionable if he's held out. The price tags have already been adjusted to really reflect him being out anyway. So really no interest. Obviously, Giannis has the potential to break this slate anytime he does play in a close competitive matchup. But outside of Giannis, these guys really don't make sense at their price points. Switching over to the Toronto Raptors, we have to talk about Nick Nurse here because he played literally a 6 to 7 man rotation last game. Started Precious Achiuwa. Keep in mind that was without Gary Trent in the lineup. If Gary Trent is out, you have to pay attention to the starting lineup here for the Toronto Raptors because whoever he rolls out at the center spot is going to be playing 35 plus minutes. Precious Achiuwa did exactly that last game. Played 37 minutes last game at a 3.9K price tag and smash value. At a 4.4K price tag, it is still worth it if he's going to see those 35 plus minutes. Same thing with Boucher. If Gary Trent is ruled out and they're going to run a bigger lineup with Boucher, 38 minutes is what he played last game, and he dropped 41.5 points. That's more than worth it at a 6K price tag. But if Gary Trent does play, then all bets are off. I have no idea what he's going to do with the rotations. Regardless, whoever starts at the center spot, be sure to play them because they're going to have a ton of minute upside. Some other noteworthy candidates, Scotty Barnes, 6.4K, always has that minute upside. Did very well last game, and as long as he's in the starting lineup and playing those starter minutes, then I do have some interest in him. Switching over to the Dallas Mavericks, really no interest at all. All the price points are too high for me. Luka went back up to a 10.8K price tag. Finney Smith, I think, had finally a good game. We just never know what to expect with him. Whenever he does shoot, then obviously he does well. From a DFS perspective, but DFS himself is not that good of a play fantasy point per minute wise. Really no interest in these guys whatsoever. And this is the lowest over under here on the slate. Switching over to the OKC Thunder, I always have some interest in Lou Dort. The minute upside is always going to be there at a 5.5K price tag until he's over that 6K mark. Then I'm always going to have some interest in him. He played 37 minutes last game. Again, he's a shooter, volume shooter. He can always break the slate. 5.5K price tag is a little bit undervalued in my opinion. Then Josh Giddey did get the price reduction here to a 6.8K price tag. You can take advantage of that in GPPs. He's probably the only other guy I would consider here. And I'm just not an SGA fan. I never have been, but he's been balling out as of late just with the volume. So it's either SGA or Josh Giddey, whoever has a ceiling game. Good luck picking between the two. I'm probably going to be taking advantage of the Josh Giddey price tag there at 6.8, just because he did get the price reduction. Switching over to the San Antonio Spurs, these guys are pretty much fully back and healthy. Trey Jones is still out, but doesn't really impact the minutes. DeJounte Murray did come down in price here at a 9.7K price tag. So at 35 projected minutes, don't mind him for bigger GPPs, especially with the price reduction. But Keldon Johnson's a guy I will have interest in here as long as he's in that 5K range. A 5.5K price tag is what he's at right now, projected 32 minutes. Just an okay play there, especially if you're looking for a low-owned pivot option. And then Jakob Poeltl went bazonkers last game at a 6.6K price tag. Now he's up to 6.9K. Whenever he's given minutes, he always performs. In a very good matchup again here, I definitely consider him a good GPP option. Jakob Poeltl just, probably should be lower owned in general, just with all the center options here on the slate. And then Devin Vassell, 4.3K price tag with Trey Mann off the court, actually does get a slight usage bump, but it really doesn't make a difference here. 28 minutes, he's also going to fly under the radar, and he makes for a decent GPP option. Switching over to the Houston Rockets, this is actually a higher over-under than I would have expected. Right now, it's sitting at a 232.5. Utah is a 12-point favorite. So if these guys can keep it competitive, if they can keep it close, Christian Wood's been smashing value every single time he sees over 30 minutes. So do you like him for GPPs? Obviously, don't love the matchup there with Rudy Gobert. And also Kevin Porter Jr. here at a 6.5K price tag. Love him even more than Christian Wood if this game does remain competitive. They're going to need scorers here against Utah. Don't mind him for bigger GPPs. And then also Jalen Green, a 4.8K price tag. I don't really get the price reduction on him. He's actually been shooting pretty well and shooting a lot. So we love volume shooters here in the pace-up spot, which makes Jalen Green yet another good GPP option from this roster. Switching over to the Utah Jazz, Donovan Mitchell is out, which does impact the usage across the board for this entire starting lineup, which means guys like Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, and Bogdanovic will pick up the roles for scoring and also ball handling, so you have to keep that in consideration. So all these guys make for decent options, especially in GPPs if they stay lower owned. Of these guys, Bogdanovic is probably going to be my favorite here, getting the price reduction at a 5.8K price tag. And I also don't mind Mike Conley also getting the price reduction at 6K, and then Jordan Clarkson probably in that exact order. Also, Joe Ingles will see some run off the bench at a 3.7K price tag. It's projected right now to play 27 minutes, which is more than enough for Joe Ingles. The only thing with Joe Ingles is that he is a shooter, so he has to get hot pretty quick to cover that price point. But he is projected 27 minutes off the bench, and I do consider him a low-owned GPP option. Switching over to the Clippers, really no interest at all whatsoever. The minutes have been all over the place. They've been going very deep into the rotation. We're seeing minute upsides here from Reggie Jackson of about 28 to 30 minutes. That's not what we like to see. With Reggie Jackson, you want to see 35 minutes, especially at a 6K price tag, because fantasy point per minute wise is sitting around the 1, which doesn't make sense. So want to see him, hitting that 35 mark, and he hasn't been. Marcus Morris, the exact same thing. He's probably my favorite option from this roster, but really no interest all the way around from the Los Angeles Clippers. Switching over to the Denver Nuggets, probably only a little bit of interest here in Jokic, given the matchup. This is a smash spot for him in terms of the matchup here. They get the price increase. If you happen to land on him as the last piece, definitely don't mind him. And I do think there's enough value here on the slate to land on somebody like Jokic or Giannis. Jokic is probably my favorite spin up on the slate. I know that's not contrarian, but again, if they do keep it close and competitive at a 12.4K price tag, he can easily go off for 70 plus points. And there is another guy here I want to talk about here from this roster here, Bones Highland. The last 3 games have been blowouts, and he's seen tremendous run in those games. So if this game does blow out, then Bones Highland has yet another great ceiling. But regardless, he's projected 24 points, and he has been balling out. Good fantasy point per minute player, so he will also fly under the radar. Bones Highland, 3.8K, yet another good GPP option here from the Denver Nuggets and Clippers. Now let's talk about the Detroit Pistons. Killian Hayes, I don't want to ever talk about him again based on what he did to me last game. He is questionable for this game, so if he does sit, guys like Corey Joseph will pick up minutes. And just point guards in general. So Frank Jackson, if he plays, he'll also pick up some run. But here's the deal with the Detroit Pistons. They're literally getting blown out all the time. The big question mark is if they can keep it competitive, then I do like these guys, but that's a huge what if. Kate Cunningham did get another price reduction down here to 7.3K. We've seen him go all the way up to 8K. And this game is supposed to be competitive. So I do like these guys for GPPs. I do like Cade Cunningham. I do like Saddiq Bey. Minute upside is there. Good fantasy point per minute players. And again, the big question is if they can keep it close. If they can keep it close, then I love these players. If they don't, then I hate these players. So if you guys want to play some GPPs based on the assumption that they can keep it close, I do like Cade Cunningham and also Saddiq Bey. Switching over to the Sacramento Kings, we are without Halliburton. Halliburton does impact the usage to some of these players. De'Aaron Fox is not going to be contrarian by any means. He does get a slight fantasy point per minute bump, but he only played 26 minutes last game because he did get into some foul trouble. But he is back here. We expect him to play 30-plus minutes, so he becomes an intriguing play. I'm not really that high on him because of the price tag, but guys like Harrison Barnes I have a lot more interest in, and also Davion Mitchell, who does get the slight minute bump. But, these guys, their price tags really are adjusted pretty much accordingly. So I would only consider these guys for GPPs, and really big GPPs at that. I'm definitely going to be looking elsewhere for some of these mid-range value plays. And then last but not least, we do have the Indiana Pacers versus the Los Angeles Lakers. The Pacers are actually without Miles Turner, and we know whenever Miles Turner is out, Sabonis takes that center role and runs with it. So at a 10.1K price tag, I do have some interest there for GPPs. I actually consider him a pretty good GPP option. I know he's not going to be the most contrarian option, but with him being the last game on the slate, I do expect his ownership to be lower than expected. I also do have some interest here in Justin Holiday. He's been seeing a tremendous amount of minutes here in the starting lineup, playing 37 and 32 minutes. That's more than enough to cover that price point there. Right now, he's the best value play from this roster. We have him projected at a 5.27 point per dollar value. And then also Goga coming off the bench. He's not expected to start, at least I do think so. Yeah, Torrey Craig's expected to start at the power forward spot. Regardless, he's going to be in that rotation, and he's projected 20 minutes. And Goga historically a 1.2 fantasy point per minute player. So don't mind him for GPPs. If he's going to be coming off the bench or not, he's going to be in another good spot here at a 3.6K price tag. Last but not least, we do have the LA Lakers. No interest in these guys. LeBron James 11.3K is a little bit too pricey for me. If you're looking to pivot off of some of these other stud options here on the slate like Jokic or Giannis, then yeah, that makes sense. But that will pretty much wrap up the slate. I covered all 13 games in their entirety. Gave you my favorite GPP options. Let's go ahead and crunch based on my projections. Just see what we're looking at as of right now. And yeah, I mean, this lineup looks loaded in my opinion. I'd say the one guy that's really flying under the radar is going to be Kobe White. But we talked about all these other options. We talked about Conchar, Melton, Jackson being some of my favorite plays. And there's a lot of Hawks and Memphis Grizzlies guys in here. Jimmy Butler, I also do like at a 9.1K price tag. And then Trae Young's probably going to be chalky with the amount of injuries to that roster and also given the over-under. But this lineup will change throughout the day. And obviously, I will update all my favorite plays on dgfantasy.com. If you guys are interested in signing up, it's only $20 a month. Gives you access to all of our cheat sheets, ownership projections, my favorite plays, my cash locks before lock, favorite GPP and leverage options, and all that. Only $20 a month gives you access to all of that for every single sport. But that will wrap up my video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this content. If you did, please do it with that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future NBA content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.